Media and Good Grief Worldwide proudly present Grief Diaries, hosted by Linda Sheldon-Fell and Angie Cartwright. Grief Diaries candidly discusses grief, uncensored, as we explore our losses, journeys, hearts, and hope for grievers everywhere. To listen to archived episodes, visit www.griefdiaries.com. And now your hosts, Linda Sheldon-Fell and Angie Cartwright.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Grief Diaries, a radio show where we openly and candidly sit, talk, and share our losses, journeys, hearts, and hope. Good evening, Angie.
Good evening, Linda.
Tonight, as we move into the holiday season, it's no secret that the holiday season is challenging for grievers, and grief comes in many forms, but
yes, it does.
So does inspiration. And tonight we have a guest who has overcome the most difficult of circumstances, and she has a lovely, lovely story about friendship and loyalty and triumph, and most of all, love. Her story became worldwide, not only because it's very moving, but it really, really reminds us of what's truly important in life. And I think that's really important to hold close to our hearts as we go into the holiday season. For many of us, the holiday season highlights the loved one we lost rather than the magic of the season. And so having our guest on tonight's show is just a beautiful opportunity to really remind us of what's truly important in life. So with that being said, I am honored to announce tonight's guest. Her name is Rachelle Friedman. She was known around the world as the Paralyzed Bride when on May 23rd, 2010, at her bachelorette party, she was playfully pushed into the shallow end of a pool, and she hit head first, breaking her neck just weeks before her wedding. And so she went from being a bride-to-be to a quadriplegic for life. And if you have a question or comment for tonight's guest, Rachelle Friedman, you're welcome to call in at 855-345-4718 during the live broadcast, and we'd love to hear from you, and Rachelle is ready to take your questions. So welcome to Grief Diaries, Rachelle Friedman. We're just really honored that you join us tonight. Yeah, it's lovely to have you here. So 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, life was very different for you. Tell us about your life before the accident.
Well, I think a lot of people could relate to this. You kind of have like a checklist of things you want to do in your life and when you're going to do them and how you want to do them. And I was pretty on track. I mean, I had pretty easy, I had a happy childhood with a happy family, very active in sports, and then go off to college, get my degree. And my little plan was, graduate by 22. I'd like to marry when I'm 24 and have a baby when I'm 27, all these little things and milestones that I wanted to happen in my life. And I was definitely on track. I had graduated college at 22, and I was set to be married at 24. It was literally happening like I had planned it.
So you were a planner.
Well, what's interesting is on a little tiny day-to-day things, not at all. But there was big milestones that were really important to me. And
sure.
and finding the love of my life and marrying him, and how old I would be when I got my first full-time job, and all these big milestones. Those are things that I planned for, and just you kind of expect them to happen. And they did. Those things did. And I got my degree, and we moved west to Raleigh, North Carolina. We got a house a year after I graduated. So literally in one summer, we got a new house. I got my first full-time job, and Chris proposed.
And what was your degree in?
My degree was recreation management, and considering my circumstances, it's not the most useful of degrees, but it was something I was very passionate about.
Sure. Yeah. And so you had everything going for you. You had your degree,
absolutely,
the love of your life, and a new house.
Yeah, and a job, which is hard to come by these
days. And a job. And a job in the field of your choice. And
yes,
what happened?
Exactly. Well, like I said, everything was going perfect pretty much in my life. And, the summer of 2009, like I said, I got the job, got the house, I got engaged, and I was set to be married in June of 2010. And on the night, in May of 2010, the night of the 22nd, was my bachelorette party. And my friends, I went home to Virginia Beach, that's where I'm from, Virginia Beach, Virginia, and we went to one of my friends' house, and it was a fun day. Like, I remember the whole day. I remember shopping for shoes that I was going to wear that night. I tried on my wedding dress standing for the last fitting that I was going to have. I got my hair trial run for the wedding, so I just wore that for my bachelorette party. I mean, I did all these amazing fun things, and we go to my friend's house, and we're cooking hamburgers on the grill. It was just a fun, chill night with my friends, and then they decided, let's get ready, and I remember getting ready with my friends in the mirror all together and being so carefree. And the limo comes, you go down to the strip, is what we call it in Virginia Beach, where all the places to go out are, and we had the time of our lives with four of my very, very best friends. And the night was kind of coming to an end. We were getting kind of bored and our feet hurt. And we decided, that happens, but there's new stilettos that I had bought that day that were very important. But we decided to head home around 1 o'clock in the morning. And I remember someone saying, let's go for a swim, and all of us were up for it. And we'd always done. We're from Virginia Beach. And we ran upstairs. I threw on a bathing suit. I ran downstairs, and I was standing on the side of the pool, and no one had gotten in yet. It was a May night, so it was still cool outside. And I hesitated, and just in a playful gesture, my friend came up behind me and pushed me into the water. And I did go head first and ended up instantly breaking my neck upon impact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember? That moment?
I do. I remember everything. I remember the whole night, and I remember, it's so, I remember pulling in the driveway. I remember running upstairs. I remember running downstairs, and I remember the moment right before it happened. And I remember going in, and when I lost feeling. And so I was underwater, and I completely lost feeling, completely lost movement in my body. And my friends knew right away that something was very wrong. And one of them jumped in, or two of them jumped in, actually. And what's a kind of coincidence is that I was a part-time lifeguard at the time. So were two of the girls.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and they teach you in lifeguarding class that you never, ever move someone who's injured their head, neck, or back.
Right.
Stabilize them in the water, but in a time of panic, when it's someone and I remember looking at her, and everything went out the window. I was scared, and I was cold, and I said, get me the heck out of here. And she and a few other girls just kind of go towards the stairs and floated me that way and got me out of the water a little bit. And I remember looking down at my legs, and I couldn't feel the wetness. I couldn't move them. I couldn't feel anything. It was just so surreal to be looking down at your legs in the water, and you can't feel it.
Right.
That was the most terrifying moment, I would say, for sure.
And you never lost consciousness or anything?
No, not at all.
And at what point did you realize that you had broken your neck and was facing life very different than just an hour or two before? At what point did you know this was going to be a life-altering evening?
Well, pretty much right away. I wasn't being rational, obviously, but so in my mind, I hadn't thought about the fact I could have broken my neck, but it did cross my mind, I'm paralyzed. I know that makes no sense, but it felt like obviously I was paralyzed. Obviously, I lost feeling, and what causes that is a spinal cord injury. But I was just completely irrational, and I remember looking around because it's the only thing I could really move at that time. Now I've gained a little more function, but I could only move my head, and I was freaking out, so I kept moving it. And the EMTs arrived so fast. And between the time the girls called 911, they got there, it might have been like 4 minutes. So it wasn't that long. Everyone acted correctly by moving quickly and realizing it was a serious situation. But I remember looking at one of the EMTs and I said, how many people walk away from something like this? And I was like, please don't beat around the bush. Like, how many people walk away? And she said, honestly, in 30 years, maybe one person.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, when you feel it happening to your own body, and you feel everything kind of leave your body, it feels permanent. So in that moment, I just felt like it was whatever I had lost was gone, and it was I couldn't obviously process it there on the side of the pool, but it was very difficult, and I had started my reality at that point, I guess.
And so you knew pretty much immediately, confirmation that you had broken your neck, and yet you were still alive, and
yes,
you were, paralyzed. At what point?
I knew.
Okay. And so what about your family? When, did they understand the ramification of the injury right away?
Yeah, that night. Well, yes. What's different about me that I've noticed in the world of paralysis, because I know a lot of people, they never think that they're going to stay paralyzed. A lot of people think, well, I'm gonna just try really hard. I'm gonna walk away, and sometimes that happens. But when it comes down to it, sometimes no matter how hard you try, it's gone. My spinal cord was totally separated. I mean, for some reason, I don't know why, but in that moment, it wasn't that I was quitting. It's just that I could tell. I never once in my mind was like, in 4 weeks I'll be walking. That never for a second crossed my mind. And I think for a lot of other people, we just handled it in a different way at that time. They didn't want to accept it, and for whatever reason at that time I was like, this is it. And I wasn't happy about it at all, but it was just, I had accepted that reality at that point.
So when your family came into the picture, did they feel like you had given up when you felt like this is not, I'm not giving up, but this is a reality? Yet did you find that people felt like, oh, don't give up, you can do this? Did you feel that pressure?
I did outside of the immediate family. I think everyone who was there, and the doctors are giving their confirmation saying maybe a 5% chance of recovery at all, and the feeling that I was feeling, like I said at the time, and them seeing me like that, I think we all understood that this was permanent based on the CAT scans and the X-rays and the doctors. But there were people who visited throughout rehab and even in the beginning in ICU who would say, just try really hard. And of course you try, but I think people, they don't, because you can't see the spinal cord, they don't realize it's not something that you can fight to fix necessarily. Like, you can fight to better your life, you can fight to be stronger, you can fight for your mental health. But, I mean, if you unplug a lamp, no matter how many times you flip the switch on and off, it's not going to turn on. And
right.
that's how the spinal cord works. So, and I understood that at that point. So when I was fighting and when I was working, I wasn't working to regain my toes and my ankles and my legs. I wanted to live a better life because I felt like this was going to have to be that. So I wanted to work as hard as I could at, transferring, getting dressed, all the things that I was going to have to do differently throughout my life.
Sure. And so did you go through, many people think of grief as losing a loved one, but as we said, grief comes in many, many forms. It can be loss of health, loss of a job, loss of a long-term relationship. There's many forms of grief. And so were you ever allowed to grieve and honor your grief that life had changed drastically and it wasn't a life that you had planned out?
Yeah, I was allowed, for sure, but everyone handles their grief differently, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. For me, looking back, I don't know if I would have done it differently, but I was definitely so worried about other people, and I've always been kind of like a jokester, and and I guess I was kind of into, even though I knew this was reality, I was accepting it day by day. I wasn't accepting it a year from now. Even though I thought that was going to happen, I was ignoring that, I guess I could say. So I wasn't, I don't know how to really word it, but at that time I was able to push really hard and be positive, but I think it did come from a place of a little bit of denial. I don't know.
Right.
So
Sure.
I wasn't thinking, oh, okay, you're going to go back home. And I think for me it was denial of what was actually possible. I was like, I'm going to get super strong and I'm not going to need any help from anyone in a year. Yes, I'll be paralyzed, I'll be a quadriplegic, but I'll be able to do everything on my own. So it was those things like that I was in denial about, I think, for a while. So I got through it with jokes and with trying to comfort other people and being distracted and working out and all those things. And it actually has been quite recent, I would say like a year ago, where I had probably the biggest slump in my new life, because before it was like every day was 3 hours a day working out. I loved working out, and I had something to do. It was something to keep my mind going, and I had a goal that I was trying to reach. And then after that, the news caught on to my story. I had everyone writing me and, saying you've inspired me. And then after that, I was getting married, and I had a beautiful wedding. And then things really slowed down, and I had time to just sit there and be like, what do I do now?
Right.
So, yeah, mine came a little bit later than I think it would for other people with this kind of injury because of my unique situation. But I think I've grieved more over the past year and a half than I did in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so,
right.
You talked about comforting, those close to you as they grieved. Tell us about your friend that playfully pushed you.
Yeah, that was and still is a difficult, it always will be a difficult situation. But, when my story hit the media, people were very quick to villainize her and say, oh, I'm the good person that got hurt, and she's the bad person in the situation who hurt that girl. And when the reality is it could have easily been the other way around.
Oh,
it doesn't
right.
make me any better than her. It doesn't make her any worse than me just because of one time that happened, because it's not like I have never horseplayed around a pool or pushed her in or, just being playful. So who am I to say, you awful person, that you did this when I've done it a million times? It just didn't have that effect in the past. So I think other people were quick to paint her as this awful person based on one situation. And it upset me very much, and because I could see on the side of the pool that night, she was trembling. She was obviously terrified, and the months and year or so after that were almost unbearable, to the point where we were talking every day almost only about the accident, because I wanted to, and I felt like, I just had to tell her how good my day went and how I'm not in pain today and she'll be fine. I just didn't want to. You don't want to get on the phone with your friend who accidentally did this to you and talk about how sad you are. So I think that's another reason my grief was put off a little bit, because I didn't want to show any grief for her.
Right. And I think, I really, really admire you for that. And I have a little bit of a story that's somewhat similar, in that the driver of the vehicle in which our daughter was a passenger, he didn't do anything wrong either. He didn't do anything, it was an accident. And I think many people were quick to throw him under the bus as a male teenage driver kind of thing. But I think, that could have been one of my own sons. And to this day, we love him to pieces. We hold them very close to our heart. His family is a wonderful, wonderful family. And he, like us, will live with us for the rest of his life. And, he certainly had absolutely no intention of harming anybody. That's just not in his nature. And it's interesting when you talk about forgiveness, because people ask, well, have you forgiven the driver? Well, there was never a need to forgive him in the first place. He didn't mean to hurt her. And so, with your friend, she did not mean to dramatically alter your life, and it's something that she lives with. And so you spent a fair bit of your time comforting her, And, I think that that's really important to talk about, is that maybe sometimes it's forgiving ourselves rather than forgiving someone else.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes grievers can be angry and bitter about the loss that they've endured, whether it be loss of health or loss of a loved one or what have you. And they're quick to place blame, but that doesn't always, blame isn't applicable in many of these cases. And I think it's important to verbalize that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because any of us could be driving down the street any given day and accidentally, hit someone. And with me, it was a pool accident, but if for the people who were villainizing her, I'm sure if you go back in their lives, there had been some point in their life where they just missed a very bad situation where they could have hurt someone. And
Beautifully said.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone in this world who hasn't maybe, playfully tried to trip someone at some point, pulled a chair out from the table, or ran a red light by accident because you didn't see, or anything where it was just something that was supposed to be nothing, or that was just an accident. All of us have done something, and people should be grateful if that has never happened. If it never ended up in a bad situation. But I think it was very difficult to see people villainize her, because I'm thinking, I can't see this person, I can't put a face to them, but I'm darn sure that they've done something in their lives, that doesn't define them like this didn't define her.
Absolutely. And so what about he was your fiancé, and now he's your husband.
Yeah. So we had to wait a year, but we got married.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
He too suddenly was embarking on his own grief journey, because as your fiancé, his life too was dramatically altered.
Him and my mom for sure. Like a lot of people's lives have been. So.
Right. And so did you find yourself, in that role of comforting him, just like you had with your best friend?
I think actually for Chris, he was someone I did do that in the very beginning. Like even the night the accident happened, I got on the phone with him, and I just wanted to talk to him because he comforts me. We comfort each other, and I wanted to talk to him and tell him what happened. And I did that in the most unemotional way possible, because I was trying to put myself in his situation, and had he called me screaming and crying and freaking out, I would have felt so helpless, and I'm sure he did anyways. But, I just don't know if I would be able to bear him, hearing his distress. So I was very, calm and collected even the night that it happened, telling him what had happened. So in the very beginning, I think that was the case. But coming out of all of this, I think Chris is the only person, even now, that I feel like I could ever cry to, that I could ever talk about my pain to without it, affecting his whole day or making him he's able to take me venting and talking about what I want to talk about without it affecting him in a negative way throughout his day too much. And I think that's a really strong thing to be able to do, to be able to listen to someone's, sadness and just be there for them without them seeing you upset listening to it. Because if I saw that, I would have a very difficult time doing it.
And what he's doing is he's giving you the gift of holding that space for you to grieve.
Exactly.
And that is a beautiful, beautiful gift. And, Angie, you and I have talked about that a little bit. Holding the space for a griever is very, very important. That doesn't mean you take on their grief, and that doesn't mean, that you ignore your own grief, or, it just means that you hold that space for the griever, allowing them to vent, cry, scream, wail, whatever need they have in that moment, and loving them through that moment.
Right. And I think listening to both of you tonight, what I've heard, and it goes around a lot in our world, is that a tragic situation happens, and I think Linda, she's not heard your story. Linda had the news reporters in her face right away after Allie's passing, and so you as well were launched into the world of social media and things like that, and then really and honestly, the humanness in us, and I think it is the humanness in us, we want to give the world an okay face. We want to be the hope. And there's nothing wrong with hope. And I heard you mention here just recently that just here recently, was it, that you said that you started to be able to create your own space maybe for your own grief. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It happened, definitely for me and hopefully for, you as well. But, Chris is someone, I think we both do it. Like, we're not going to have hopefully, not the worst day ever on the same day. So if I'm having the worst day ever.
Right?
Yeah, he right. can, if it's on the same day, that would be really bad. But, on days that are my bad day, he can take it. And if he's having a bad day, I can take it. Right. So we're there, there for that, because it is, it's difficult. Even if someone wants to give you that place, if I saw that my sadness made someone so sad, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't want to make them feel that way.
Right.
So,
right.
And and I write about that stuff, Linda, all the time, about how and I was like, she talked about the poster child of grief and how I too, and we've been taught that way in our society. If you're listening tonight, it is such a difficult thing, and I think many of us can relate to it. Is that our own loved one has died, or we've had a tragic situation happen, such as Rachel's, and what do? We comfort everyone around us, and we put our feelings aside. I think that's a human loving thing too, but it also can have dangers. I think it's a real good reminder to make sure to go back and provide that space for yourself and for
right.
maybe your loved one that's there to say, what, I'm going to have to provide this time for me. And that doesn't mean I don't love the one that drove the car or that pushed me off of the dock or whatever. But, my husband died instantly from the same injury, actually, that you're describing, but it was in a car wreck. And he didn't make it. They said he may have made it, I think 3 minutes of life. The coroner said he may have made it 3 minutes if he would have lived. And, and I was blamed as the one who was driving the car that night. And what came to be was, of course, the truth, which is I was not the driver, but I was wanting to drive that night. And we were 21. I mean, I was 21. He was a little older than I was. But there was a lot of guilt with that because people would say, she killed him, things like that. And so I know what it's like to be not only, of course, a horrific loss such as that, but also blamed for, and then happen to be the strong person in the family. It's kind of like you go into survival mode and your heart stops and your brain goes into overdrive and this fake smile, not that it's not genuine, but it is sometimes fake. Hi, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Because if I say, hey, I'm just having a day, they're going to be like, it's that silence that we see or that face that changes, and it's like, why can't we be there? Why can't we allow that space to happen? Because not a lot of people create the space to allow themselves to grieve. And tonight, Rachel, what do you think? Don't you think that that's important to the listeners tonight, if there was a message from what you've been through up to this point and being able to allow yourself to grieve? It happened how it happened. We can't beat ourselves up. It just unraveled as it did. But have you had that I just don't like this day and beat the out of your bed or whatever, or whatever you did, whatever you said, the bleep day, and just let it go? Have you had those days?
Oh, yeah. I think people I've tried to at least be honest about that I'm not always smiling, I'm not always happy, because when I'm in the media, the story that people want to hear is the triumphant one. That's all they want to hear. But they don't see behind the doors, when I'm hurting and when I have to cast because I can't go to the bathroom like everyone else.
Exactly.
All the things that I lost aren't big and fluffy and happy, and and it's not part of the big news story, so that's all people see. So I try to be pretty forthcoming with people that you don't have to be happy all the time, because I'm sure as heck not, and I'm not okay with this injury, and I don't wish that this happened to me, and I would do something different with that night in a heartbeat, and I hope that there's a cure someday. It's not an injury that I want.
Exactly.
I think people, they see this beautiful story, and they don't even think about the behind the scenes bad stuff that I experienced, aside from the fact that I'm just sitting in a wheelchair, because that's only 2% of it.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And, this is a show that talks candidly and openly and honestly about things such as that, the real stuff behind the closed doors. And Linda and I have tried to for the several, I don't know how many, has it been a year, Linda? I don't know. But really looking behind the closed doors and talking about the real stuff. And earlier you had mentioned, that did you say your legs burned really bad daily?
Oh, yeah, I have. It's not even just in the legs. Basically anywhere that I can't feel, and my function is very hard to explain over the phone, but I'm a quadriplegic, so I do have impairment in 4 limbs.
Okay.
But I can move my arms. I just don't have finger function. And so basically from the chest down it burns on the outside of my arms and in my fingers. So 90% of my body is always on fire, and it's the worst when I wake up in the morning to the point where I can not even move. So for 4.5 years, I haven't woken up feeling well. And so that's the side that people don't see. And and so it is very difficult to talk about that because no one wants to sit there, it seems anyways, that the story of the picture painted of my story is the pretty one, but like I said, it's not. This is very unpretty. Some parts of it.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's actually beautiful, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just got to tell you, I think it's beautiful. Not beautiful that you're in the pain. What I think is beautiful is that you're able to liberate yourself, and hopefully tonight, somebody who has lived in that kind of pain and has continued to smile, and maybe even tonight has contemplated taking their own life.
Yeah.
Because of that physical pain every day. I don't have what you have, but I have been to the edge of that, of living in my body. I have fibromyalgia, and my body burns every day. And you can't disconnect from the body. You just you're in
you
it.
You want to run away, but you can't.
Yeah. If I could just put my body up on a shelf,
I definitely cannot.
Right. So, but this is the thing is that we can't separate ourselves from that, and so people don't see. They may see your wheelchair, and they see the blonde and beautiful, and you are very beautiful. But I'm just saying that, like you said, I'm so grateful that you're sharing the real, true stuff behind what happens behind the closed doors, because that's where the beauty lies. I believe, don't you, Linda?
Oh, absolutely. And, by talking about, just like you said, Rachel, when you talk about, because, I've got a fairly strong medical background, and when you have quadriplegia and, paralysis and such, chances are you're going to have a whole lot of other medical issues that correlate to that, including like a neurogenic bladder, where, you've got to self-catheterize or have someone catheterize you, to empty your bladder and such. And, bringing that up is part of your life now. And we can't talk about the silver lining, the light, without taking someone through the dark journey first.
Amen.
And so to really help someone understand what you've been through and why your story is so inspiring, they need to understand.
I think that's what I meant before. That was exactly like how I would say it, like to not just focus on the good things, because people don't see the bad stuff. So they're like, oh, that's awesome. But
to
what I
really
want
paint
people
that
to see
picture.
Is, yeah,
to paint that picture of why you're such an inspiration, and you are. People need to understand. It's beautiful to be a beacon of light, and that's a huge gift that you now have and hold in your hand, to be a beacon of light, of hope for so many. But to truly understand how bright that light is, we have to take them through the darkness of that journey on how you got here. And
I think allow them to be in that darkness and talk about it, Linda, is such a beautiful thing. I really am so glad. I'm a little bit overwhelmed and emotional because, Linda, you started this show. I don't know how long it's been since you started this show.
It's been almost a year. You're right. It's been almost
a year. And and what I want to say is that, the show has been a venue for it's always higher than us. There's always a higher purpose. And the thing is that tonight, our guest tonight, the beauty is that She is just as beautiful, whether her leg, the legs burning is part of who she is. I am all of that. I am the not cleaning my hair, or the not my house is a mess, or whatever that society says we shouldn't talk about is probably what we really need to be talking about, because that's how we'll keep her. What I'm saying, we keep those people that are heroes in our life. Robin Williams, our hero, one of our wonderful major heroes, but there were things he couldn't socially talk about. Right. Is that true?
Right. And yeah, and that's, I do want to ask you, Rachel, because as Angie said, this is, a show where we openly and candidly discuss our losses and our hearts and our hopes and our journey. Did you ever feel suicidal?
Not legitimately, no. I don't know if maybe that's not the right word, but I never got to the point where I wanted to die or that I was going to do it. But there are moments, very small ones, and it's mostly related to the pain that we were talking about. That when it's that bad, you're just like, that would be the only way out, but I can't. It's something that crosses your mind, but immediately goes out, because I honestly have so much to live for that I would never ever do it. So to me, suicidal means that you're really out on this point where you don't know what else to do, and I never got to that point. But there are times where it does seem so difficult that you're just like, gosh, 20 more years of this seems so difficult, and I'll only be 49 years old. I can't even imagine living like this for 20 more years, but I have so much to live for, and that's not even that long, considering how long life is. So,
and truth be told, I think that anyone who has suffered a profound loss, I think it's safe to say that a good majority entertain the notion of they just want the pain to end. And of course, for most, it's just that fleeting thought. But just know, Rachel, that's pretty normal in the world of grief, and it's okay to have those moments. It's certainly when it remains and doesn't fleet away like it should. Then that becomes right, and then that becomes something that needs to be addressed clearly. But I think that when you're facing the profound loss of life as you knew it, and you're scared and frightened, and it feels overwhelming and such, I think that's it's pretty heartfelt to say that it crosses most people's mind, and it's okay, and
that's another reason I want to be open about the fact that not every day is smiles and cute dresses and going out with my husband to dinner, because people look at that and I don't want people to look at that and think, well, she was never sad, I guess I'm weak. And that's not the case at all. So we all get that, and we all scream into our pillows.
Well, and I think part of the reason why we do such a good job as a society of not demonstrating that out in public, that darker side, is because the looks of pity are really, really hard to deal with. And I'm sure you have gotten more than your fair share of that look of pity, and many grievers do as well. People, especially grieving parents, they get that look of pity. And it can make it very uncomfortable for both sides, for both parties, and and so I think that as we become more comfortable with the idea of openly discussing our grief and such, and people become more comfortable hearing grief and just holding the space rather than feeling like they need to fix it or this or that, the pittiness will kind of be something of, in the past. And
the one thing that's difficult... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go right ahead.
Oh, what I was going to say is I think it's interesting you brought that up about the pity, because we talked about multiple times how there's, different kinds of grief and different kinds of loss. And, people will look at my story and be like, wow, I don't know how you went through that. But then I'll hear someone else's story, and maybe it wasn't a physical loss, but an emotional loss or the loss of your daughter or a husband, and to me that just sounds like something I could never handle. So we all, go through different things that are totally different, but when it comes to the pity, I'm wearing mine on my body, like it's on my sleeve. So I feel like when I go out to the mall, I'm just getting stares of pity. I mean, imagine if all of your grief and all of your losses were written all over your body.
Right.
People would look at you a little weird, so that's basically what I get on a daily basis. And so I do feel, and this is something I'm trying to get over on my own, but there is a stigma that anyone who's in a wheelchair is just like depressed and, they live like this just sad, awful life. And there are, like we talked about, obviously moments like that. But I feel like if I go out and I dress in sweatpants and I'm not wearing a smile on my face, that people are going to pity me even more. And so I do feel the pressure to, like, smile at everyone I see and, like, dress nice and whatever just to cover up to, I'm going to get pity either way because of the wheels, unfortunately. But I try to mask a little bit of it, and it's difficult because I'm never going to blend in. Like, on a day where I'm having a bad day and I just want to go out to eat and, like, not have anyone look at me, it's never going to happen. So it's like reliving your grief, on a daily basis. So like anyone else. So it is difficult and something I'm definitely still dealing with and probably will be dealing with for a long time.
Right. So, Rachel, we've talked about the dark side of your journey pretty good over the last 45 minutes. And first off, I really honor you for sharing your heart very openly with us. And
yes, of course.
Yet, over the past 4.5 years, I just in talking with you tonight, I hear it in your voice. You are a fighter. Mm-hmm. You are determined to make something of this, and that comes through absolutely brilliantly. Not only did you, when the media got wind of your story and you made the rounds on the talk shows and in the magazines and such, you were very open and honest about it. But then you also wrote a book that came out in May called The Promise, A Tragic Accident, A Paralyzed Bride, and the Power of Love, Loyalty, and Friendship. And it became a New York Times bestseller.
I know. I learned that like a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so you then took everything a step further and wrote a book about it. And that's a beautiful thing. That takes a lot of courage. Because there's a lot of different characters in this story. You, your fiance, who's now your husband, your bridesmaids who spent that beautiful evening with you, and then were there at the pool when the tragic accident happened, saved you, and your family. So you put all of that into a book, and you're not stopping there. You now are a spokesperson for Brawnability and, Colors Wheelchairs, and you also, you have not given up your competing. Is that right? You're still doing some really physical activities that many of us will never do in our entire lifetime.
I try, yeah. I play on a wheelchair rugby team. I've been sadly out of commission because my arm has been really hurting lately, but 13 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I was playing wheelchair rugby, and I had been playing it ever since that time, and it's something that I love. I love competition. So.
And you've done hand cycling, and is this true? You've even done surfing?
Oh yeah, the surfing is something I can definitely do. That's fun. It's basically let's be real, it's kind of like boogie boarding, but we call it surfing because it's on the surfboard. But it's on your stomach, and you have people out there, and there's these really cool organizations. Our local one is called Ocean Cure. It's in Wilmington, North Carolina, and they are so cool. And I know the guy there, and he basically takes anyone out whenever they want to go out and helps them surf. So,
wow.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
How very cool. So see, many of us who don't have any kind of loss or grief or impairment don't do those things. And yet you, with a positivity and determination, 13 weeks after you're out there playing wheelchair rugby, that is an inspiration. That is an inspiration.
Thank you.
So, take us now to the bright side, to the light. You had a great childhood, you had a great life, and then in one instant, it seemingly distinguished your light, and your world became very, very different. And yet now here you are, taking everything and making some good happen from it. And the reason why I really want to talk about this is because many grievers struggle trying to find a silver lining. And my personal belief is that there's a silver lining in everything. And I am not afraid to share that, of course, with my own loss of losing my daughter, there are blessings that have come from it. And many people, I can hear the collective gasp, of what? Did she just say? How can that possibly be? But it is true. And yes, I will always grieve the loss of my daughter until my very last breath. But there are some blessings that have come from it that wouldn't have come any other way. And I really want to talk about what you're doing because it's important for grievers to have hope that if we can do it, if we can find the silver lining, maybe they can too. And look at and Angie, poster child for grief your whole life. You're doing some really cool things.
Right.
And that have come about because of your circumstances. And so by openly talking about things like that, we give grievers that little flicker of hope, that little flame of hope that if we can do it, maybe they can too. So Rachel, take us to where you are today. What are you doing today? What are some of the favorite things that you get to do?
Well, my biggest thing now is just recently we have a surrogate and we are having a baby in April.
No!
So that's a big deal. Yes.
Oh, congratulations. Oh, my gosh. Oh, that is so crazy cool. Good for you. Wow.
I want to make sure the listeners know this just because it's a medical thing, but it's not the paralysis that keeps me it's not the reason I need a surrogate. People who are paralyzed can conceive and carry the same way, but I unfortunately have a few side effects or requires medication that would be harmful. So it's just my personal issues. But I had a friend, an old friend from college, a different friend. I hadn't seen her in like 8 years, and she found out that I needed a surrogate and stepped forward, and we're having a baby. So that's all good news.
Congrats.
That's fantastic. You must be absolutely over the moon. Babies are such a blessing, and they are so healing. They are so healing, and that is an incredible. I have goosebumps, and I'm just absolutely thrilled for you. I did not know that, and thank you for sharing that with us. That is just really crazy cool. So, how does your are you getting the nursery ready and?
Tell us where you're at. I'm a little nervous about all that because the baby's due in April, and because I'm in a wheelchair, there's a lot of things that I have to do to be able to take care of it myself. And for example, the room that is going to have to be the nursery, it has carpet in there. It's a guest room. I never go in there, but obviously I'm going to have to be able to do that. So we have to put wood floors down, and I'm going to have to find a wood person to help me make the crib, something I could roll under. I've seen some cool things where people roll under their cribs who are in a wheelchair. So there's a lot to do. So I'm a little nervous, but yeah, we're heading that way.
Oh, that's just beautiful. That's just beautiful. So what part of it are you most nervous about, do you think?
Well, the before the baby stuff, I think, is pretty much anyone. Just, is everything going to be ready in time, or do I know what I'm doing? Just anyone's going to feel like that. But afterwards, there's a reality to it, and the reality is I can't it's not going to be us switching nights 50-50. like a normal couple would to get up for the baby because I can't just hop up out of bed. So it's just going to be figuring out what works for us and a schedule that works for us, and you can't really figure out exactly how to take care of a squirming baby until you're taking care of a squirming baby. So I'm just going to be kind of figuring things out as I go. Just like, when you have an injury like this and you don't have any finger function, you figure out how to do your makeup. You figure out how to do things, and so I can't really do it till the baby's here. So I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm sure I'll figure something out with how to do everything. Yeah.
Well, truth be told, every first-time parent is, nervous and wondering how they're going to do it. And you learn by trial and error. But I also want to say that, any of that notion of 50-50 in the middle of the night, who was 50-50? I never had 50-50.
I never, no.
It's always been one parent. And in your case, it'll be your husband. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. But yeah, that fairy tale, the 50-50 getting up in the middle of the night. I don't know, but that's beautiful. Your husband will take on that duty, and you'll both play equally beautiful roles in the raising of this baby, and that's just amazing. And so, what else? Because of course I could gush the rest of the radio show about the beauties of having a baby and such, but I'm sure. But what?
She'll just keep going and going.
I know. So
we love our babies.
Yes, we do. Tell us about the book. It did come out in May. And what was that like writing that, sharing your story that you knew would be a permanent part of history in a written book?
It was very cool because I never thought I'd be an author. I didn't really like English class or anything like that. So it was very cool to be able to do and share my story. And it was difficult, and I think still I protect my friend more than myself sometimes. So I was so nervous about how to say things, how to word them without it being too difficult for her if she did read it, which at this point I don't think she has. But if she ever does, that it would be something that she could accept and could read and be okay with it. And so that was difficult. That was something on my mind. But overall, sharing the whole story, it was very cool to be able to say, like, my opinion and get everything out the way I wanted to say it. And so that was fun.
Cool. And so your title, you say The Promise, a tragic accident, a paralyzed bride, and the power of love, loyalty, and friendship. A paralyzed bride, that's pretty powerful to put in a title. Was that your choice? Did that bother you?
It doesn't bother me, and it wasn't it was kind of a collaboration on picking a title, but that is something that people labeled me as, it's just the fact that that's like how people recognize my story. And it doesn't bother me, but I want as many people to get the realities of my life and about quadriplegia as possible. And I felt like giving kind of an in-your-face title like that would make people want to pick it up and read what was on the inside. So, yeah, hopefully it does.
Well, very true. And so you find yourself, one of the most powerful gifts a person can have is their voice. And you are a voice for quadriplegics everywhere. What are you doing with that?
Oh, gosh, it's been so much, pressure. And that has been pressure because I feel like I'm a more known person with paralysis in the country, I guess, who's had their story out there and who has had the opportunity to not only have the book, but blogs where it's totally me, where I've blogged for the Huffington Post as well. And I want to put out there the things that I feel like other people in my situation would care about. And so it's been really cool to be able to do, and I'm very grateful I have that voice because as someone with a disability or another difficult thing in their life where other people don't understand it, you want so badly for people to understand you and where you're coming from that it's nice to have that voice where so many people can see it.
Well, and not only that, but you find that you're the voice for others as well because you can say something that they wish they could say and they can't, or they're reluctant to, or, Angie and I find ourselves in that situation all the time. We become the voice for grievers around the world. And, it's kind of a honorable position to be in. But I do have to ask, so you blog for the Huffington Post. How do you blog? Do you have a voice recognition software on your computer? How do you...
Well, I have an iPad, so if I'm by myself, I'll use Siri. But I have because I have the arm function and the wrist function, I can type easily with my finger, just touching it, because it's just a touch screen. Yeah. So iPhones, iPads are a godsend. Any tablet. So I don't know. It's been seriously, that is the most amazing thing for people with my injury and up. I've seen people use adapted stuff who can't even move their arms on a tablet. So it's like a godsend of an invention.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so what advice do you have for others going through something challenging? And again, the reason for asking this is because grievers, sometimes we get so caught up in what we lost, it's really difficult to try to find something that gives us hope or makes us, gives us something that's worth living for. What do you say to people in those shoes?
Well, one thing that I feel and I felt really strongly about is that I think a lot of times we try to find out, why did this happen to me? What is the point of this awful thing that happened? And in my opinion, and this is just how I feel, and maybe I'll just get some people's brains going, but, I don't necessarily feel like everything had to have a predetermined purpose, but we can give something a purpose. And I believe in choice. I believe in the power of your own emotions and controlling how the outcome of something happens. And if someone, for me, someone else's choice, though innocent, it changed my life and caused something bad to happen. But I can set the bad part aside, and I can look at, in spite of the accident, I don't like the spinal cord injury, but I have an amazing husband. I have amazing friends. I have an amazing mom and dad. And I live in a nice house, and I have food on my plate. And there's a lot of things that, no, it's not. I don't have to think the spinal cord injury is okay to live a happy life and see all the beautiful other things are in it. So for anyone who's lost something or is going through something difficult, it's okay to not like that happened, but just look at all the other things around you that are beautiful and try and focus on those things as much as you can.
And so it's that heart full of gratitude that helps you to face the future. And, we hear a lot about that, the gratitude, having a heart full of gratitude. And I agree wholeheartedly with it. Having the roof over your head, the food on your plate, if you step outside of your world and see that there are those right now in this very bitter cold snap that a lot of the country has, there's people there who are homeless, who are struggling to find their meal for the night, are struggling to stay warm. And so everyone has challenges. Sure, the magnitude of some challenges may not seem comparable to others, but the reality is that, there's challenges everywhere. And having a heart full of gratitude helps to switch your focus from what you don't have to what you do have. And that can be really healing.
Right.
Absolutely. And for me, I focus on trying not to define myself by the tragic thing that happened to me. Because if I only define my life as I had the spinal cord injury and that's the only part of me, then I'm not a very happy or lucky person. But if I take everything in my life and put it into a big bowl, there's more good than there is bad. So that's what I try to do.
And so how do you inspire others? Because I know that you speak all around the nation on your story, and hoping to inspire people to have have a heart full of gratitude and see the blessings that they do have, how do you reach them? Because Angie and I, in our field of work, we come across many, many people that we want to help. We want to comfort. We want to help them find the sunrise again in life. It's really, really hard seeing people in so much pain. And, you know, of course, you know, we comfort them first and validate their grief. But, and then you want to be a role model to say, well, if I can do it, so can you. Do you have any tools or steps or tips to offer people who are struggling to find their footing in life, who are struggling through a challenge, you know, anything that you could give them that they can take away with tonight?
Just to keep fighting and keep looking for the silver lining and keep focusing on the good things. It's not easy, and I think once people, like we talked about earlier, allow themselves to have the moments where they grieve, that's okay as long as you allow yourself the moments to be happy too. There's going to be days where you're happy, and there's going to be days where you're sad, and it's okay to smile after something bad happened, and it's okay to cry after that too. So I think if we just allow ourselves to feel how we want to feel when we want to feel that way, then we wouldn't be walking around so tense and sad on the inside, so it would all be out. So that would be my advice, is just to feel the way you feel and don't be ashamed of it.
Wonderful advice.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in today's age, it's lovely to see that, you know, universities are starting to study things like this, like the heart full of gratitude and forgiveness and such. And they've actually proven that heart full of gratitude, forgiveness therapy, that kind of thing, actually, you know, has some really clear benefits to it. Things like, you know, lessened physical and emotional toll of stress. Angie and I have talked before about grief and how we hold it in our body. And, you know, it can come out in different ways, increased blood pressure, you know, this, that, the other. And do you feel like your fibromyalgia could be tied in to your lifelong grief?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, whenever I was starting to do after my mom died of the drug overdose, I definitely started to look at all aspects of my life, and health was one of them. You know, we're made up of a lot of things, physical, spiritual, and emotional, and all those things. And so, you know, I had to honor that part in me, and it sounds like that, you know, you've done that, but I went downhill first. When I started not to be able to, you know, jog and things like that, and I kept waking up every day with fire running through my body and I couldn't escape it, I gave up for a long time. I just zeroed down. You know, it was a very, you know, we talked about it just a little bit ago, you can't get rid of your body necessarily. And so, and you can't just stay numb 100%. Or you can't function. So, you know, what do you do? And finally, I think what came to me, and it's in every story that I've ever heard, which there's this defining, maybe not a defining moment, but there was a moment that we decided that we were going to fight to live, you know. And it might not have been huge for some, it might have been huge for others, but for me it was huge. And it was a moment that I decided that, you know what, you know, Angie, your body doesn't function very well. Of course, my body functions completely better than yours, you know, of course, tonight.
Yeah.
And but I, you know, to honor who and what I am, I had to say, you know, Angie, your body doesn't work very well, and it's not your friend most of the time, and, you know, it wants to do its own thing, and, you know, you're not going to be able to run like you used to, but there are other things you can do. And I think that's what I'm hearing tonight, you know, is that you find out we know what we can't do, and we know what we have lost.
Yeah,
we face that. We know that. But to get from that place to making the decision, and I really believe it's a decision, and I don't think that in the very, very, you know, some people have, but from my story and in my experience, it wasn't right away. Some people's decision is very immediate. They are going to fight, and that's it. And sometimes their grief or their pain comes later. And I've talked to people who have done that. And then there are people like that have my experience who, just grieve, and they're going to do what they need to do. And I felt lost, but I really wasn't lost. What I was doing is I was finding my way through it, and I was feeling my way through it. And we have a great friend named Benjamin, Embrace. It talks about embracing everything and embracing the pain and embracing that. But embracing life again, if you would have told me this 4 weeks after my mom passed or my husband passed or when my grandpa died or, when my uncle Tony died, I would have hung up on you. I'm not kidding you.
Right.
I'm not kidding you. But it is to choose. You got to make the decision. I don't know when it'll be for whoever is listening tonight, but it's either choose to live or to exist, and there's such a difference in that. I've existed before merely. It's like living a death. And then there is living again, where you're breathing full of life, and it doesn't mean you don't have bad days. I still have bad days. She talked about still having bad days. That's the humanness of us. We all still have bad days. I look like my profile picture every day, okay? I'm sorry. I really don't. I mean, I run around in PJs half the time, and I'm not kidding you. It's like they won't even recognize me. It's funny, but I had to make that decision, and it was a painful decision. And I'll tell you, some people choose not to fight.
Right.
They choose not to, they don't choose life. They lose hope. And that's why I think what we do is so important, and I'm so grateful you're on the show tonight. There's other things that we grieve other than just those that we lose. People lose their bodies every day. They lose the functions in their bodies. They live with illnesses every day. They cannot escape it. They live with the multitude of medications every day that they have to take in order to just, barely just live, just to live. And they are our heroes, but they have made a decision long ago, somewhere along the line, to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, beautifully said. So, Rachel, did that moment, was that a clear moment for you? And wanting to live?
Wasn't. I can't define a moment, but from the very beginning, I was so comforted by Chris. Like, we have this little connection, and I can't ever explain to anyone, but just having him available to me when I wasn't happy and when I was happy, he's the reason that I want to live, So for me, it's him, but for someone else, it could be something else. It could be they love something, anything, and that keeps them going. And so find that support, find that hobby, find something that you love, no matter how big or small, and that's your reason to fight. Or maybe or it's yourself, love yourself enough to be. That's the reason that you fight. And I can't name a specific moment, but had he left, I would have had to reevaluate how I was dealing with this. I guarantee you it wouldn't have been the same. So I don't know how I would have come out or what would have been my reason to be strong, or if I would have been as strong, I don't know. But the way it went down is, I had someone that was helping me through it, and I tried to focus only on that.
And also you found a purpose in life. You found a purpose as a spokesperson for quadriplegia. You've and that in itself kind of led to now. You have a bit of some skills. PR, communications. You've gained some extensive knowledge and experience. In areas that you didn't necessarily expect to,
Yeah. One thing led to another, basically. I mean, because in the beginning, my reason was Chris, and of course he's still part of it. But like you said, I had I not been the way that I was, as early as I was, positive in that moment, I wouldn't have had the strength to go on the news and tell my And so one thing led to another. I had a support system, and then that led to me being able to share my story, which led to people being impacted, which has continued on and has kept me going on. So one thing, like you said, one thing leads to another, and there's always something. And whether it's you giving something a purpose and finding something out there that's for you. And that's life, that's me wanting to live. Because before it was my recreation job, I did that 8-9 hours a day, and I don't have that anymore. So I have to find something else I'm passionate about.
Right. And I think that's true for all grievers. I think it's really, really important. And Angie and I have written a workbook for grievers, and that is one of the steps in there, is find something that, that you to develop a passion over, because that passion, there's a whole lot of wonderful reasons behind that particular step. One of which is that a passion releases endorphins, which is healing in its own right. But that's very important, is to find a passion and allow that to be used as a healing tool for yourself.
Absolutely.
So I do want to ask, because I'm really, really curious. You've been you've been on the Today Show, MSNBC, Inside Edition. You've been in Cosmo magazine and other magazines. But the one that I'm really curious about is you've been a guest on VH1's Couples Therapy. What was that?
Oh yeah. Well, basically, that was it's a show on VH1. They've done a few seasons so far. They've had 4 now. But I wasn't one of the couples. I was not the celebrity couple. Basically, what I was the celebrity couple reality check. So I was brought in for a one segment part of a show, and people say reality shows aren't real, and I know a lot of them aren't. But this one, if you ever watch Couples Therapy, and you think,
real.
oh, this can't be real, it really is. Because I know the therapists, I know the people, and I saw it, and I talked to these people, and it's real couples who are going through real trouble. And in the world of Hollywood, at least compared to my life, it seems like very silly things to be fighting over, considering, what we as a couple have been through, to see people, fighting and bickering and complaining about really small things. So I think it was a really cool experience to go on there and share our story of love and being there for someone no matter what, and the whole shebang. And it was really interesting. I met DMX and everything, so the rapper.
And did he get your autograph?
No, but he did invite me to a show, and I didn't. He came to Raleigh, and he let me and Chris up on stage with some of his people, and so we were on stage for his concert, and then we all got hungry and went to the Waffle House. So I went to the Waffle House with DMX.
Very, very cool. Well, I saw that in your bio, and I thought, okay, I've got to ask about that one.
I'm not a celebrity.
Well, I thought, were they trying to exploit you and Chris, saying, well, clearly this, there has to be all, all this, baggage resulting from the tragedy and such. And so I just had to ask about it, and what a cool experience. And it makes me feel better knowing why you were there. What about Cosmo Magazine? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I did. I think I had been on the Today Show once at that point, and I think when it first started out, this whole media thing, every single time it comes around, I'm like, okay, no one, that's it. I'm just gonna have to keep blogging, and no one cares anymore. But I had been on the Today Show one time, and then someone did an article, and I never thought that I would. At that point, I didn't know that I was going to be known. That I was going to have a purpose at that point, just from being on TV one time and in a magazine one time. But one thing leads to another, and then people they're interested in the Cosmo story, and people, as they have heard my story, are interested in the upcoming parts of it, and it's like the new baby on the way. So, so it's been really fun to share my story, for sure.
I almost see a reality show in the making, don't you, Angie?
I think there should be.
Well, you do have most people, again, would think, oh, my gosh, what a tragic story. But truly, you are a beautiful story of hope. And you are not going to let one defining moment define the rest of your life. You're going to use it as fuel to impact others.
Yeah.
And that is a very selfless thing to do. I mean, you could have ended up, working in your field, in your degree for the rest of your life, but the true impact that you will have that will last for generations to come, that has that true ripple effect that goes out forever and ever and ever, is what you do now.
Yeah. And I'm enjoying it, yeah.
By talking about your story and sharing, that you have been through tragedy, you have your own grief journey, and yet there's a silver lining. Now you've got a New York Times bestseller, best-selling author to your title. I mean, you've been on couples therapy in Cosmo magazine, and you are a voice for quadriplegic people everywhere. And how often do you blog on Huffington Post?
I was doing it pretty regularly before, maybe 6-7 months ago. I have a lot on there, but I'm just getting back to it again. I just kind of submit one whenever I have something on my mind. So there's been a few up there that have been one of them was 10 things not to say to someone in a wheelchair. And holy moly, that thing got liked 40,000 likes and was translated into different languages, and it was a very popular blog. So that was different and very cool. Yeah.
Well, what a beautiful way to use your voice.
Yeah, definitely.
Because really, and people you see that with grief. Every so often, I come across 10 things not to say to a griever, and it's written by different authors, and as it should be, because we all live life through our own filters, right? And so, what might be 10 things not to say to one griever, certainly may not apply to. Right, but it also, a different type of griever may have 10 totally different things. So I think that they're all really valuable. And So what are your plans for the future then? You've got a baby on the way. Maybe we'll get some kind of gossip going that she's going to be in her own reality show.
Well, there's a lot of benefits to that, but one of them being you can write all the blogs you want, but people don't know what life on the inside is like. And it would be really, really interesting because it was out there that I'm having a baby and I can't help it, but I read the comments every now and then. And people are just how is she going to do that? That's selfish. People are calling me selfish for having a baby.
Really?
That's, it's sometimes it's difficult to filter the negative ones, even though they're mostly positive. So sure, they're mostly positive, but clearly there's a lot of people who don't understand because they wouldn't say that if they understood. So it would be really nice to show people, this is how you do it. I can still be functional and still be a mom, and that would be really cool to show people.
I can't imagine what frame of mind one would be in to label that as selfish.
Yeah, I don't either, because what I don't understand is people, if someone's a single parent, a single mother, then no one, they're fully capable, able-bodied, able to take care of a baby. So why with able-bodied Chris and my extra hands would we not be able to do it together? I just don't understand what people are thinking. I'm going to make it more difficult. But, no, I'm obviously help. I'm going to be able to feed it and hold it and dress the baby and, give him a second while the baby wants to cry and Chris needs a second in his room by himself. All of those things are going to be able to happen. And ultimately, it's our choice and our family's choice to come together and do this. So, yeah, I get a little frustrated by those comments, but they also make me want to write more blogs and educate even more because I see now what people don't understand. So I want to make people understand, bring them to the light of a different world.
Right, and I suppose that their negative comments are a way to help educate them because they clearly come from a not understanding. That, because if you think about it, and I'm just going to use the baby as a way to dissect, to shed light on this, is that, with the baby, yes, you need someone to change the diaper. Yes, you need someone to feed him. Yes, you need someone to burp him, and all those good things. But really, what does any human being truly need? Love.
Love. Yeah.
And you have a heart full of love waiting for that baby to arrive.
Definitely.
And
absolutely, we're excited.
Well, and we all have deficits of one way or another, right? And that didn't stop most of us from having a child.
No.
So
right.
So again, you're taking something negative and using it to educate others, and that is truly, truly a beautiful gift. We've got just a few minutes left. And it's really been an honor to have you join us this evening, Rachel. I'm just delighted to hear your story and everything you've been through. What are some keys? Is there anything you want our listeners to know before we end tonight's broadcast? Anything that you want them to go away with?
I mean, just genuinely to fight and to stay on top of life as much as you possibly can, and be okay with having the bad days. But as I said before, find something that you love. If it's not there, create something that you love, because there's so much this world has to offer. There's got to be something. I know there's something for everyone out there. I know that for a fact. And if people just spend the time trying to find what makes them happy, I know they will. So just fight for life and stay strong.
And what do you want them to know about Rachel?
Let's see about me. That I'm speaking. This is about me, but also about anyone in my similar situation in regards to paralysis. Is that our grief, though different, is most of us have experienced some kind of grief. And just because you can see mine, it makes me no different than you. And I think a lot of people, because of the wheelchair, they can see it. The grief is uncomfortable to them. And that's why people are uncomfortable around people in wheelchairs. But, yes, I'm sitting down in a wheelchair and, something bad happened to me, but it's no different than what bad thing happened to either of you. It's just something bad that happened. And I happen to be sitting down because of mine. So, yeah, people, approach people with disabilities like mine the same. Like, we're just people and going through life like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're still going to be angry if someone stole your parking spot. You're going to have acne breakouts during that time of the month. You're going to have, you're very. I mean, that's great to. You are just like anybody else. You're just sitting down, and that's very true. Very true. Well, I just want to thank you for joining us here on Grief Diaries and sharing your heart with us, taking us through your journey. Grief, as we said in the beginning, grief comes in many, many forms, but so does inspiration. And, you have overcome the most difficult of circumstances to, share a lovely story about it. And it's heartwarming to know that you and your husband got married, even if it was delayed, due to the accident and your rehabbing and such. It's a true love story, and everybody wants to see a true love story. I mean, that's really beautiful. And congratulations on and congratulations on your baby. We look forward to to waiting that wonderful arrival. And I mean, how very exciting. And it's certainly exciting for your family as well. Your mom and your everyone. And I'm certainly excited. Can you tell, Angie?
I can tell. Yeah, very. Yeah.
Oh,
we'll be over at your baby shower. No.
Oh yeah.
Better
we'll
yet.
Come babysit.
Yeah, better yet. We'll host her baby shower. Oh, we're on
exactly,
it. We're all
right?
over that one.
Exactly.
So, well, Rachel, once again, thank you for as us grievers face yet another holiday season. For spending the evening with us and sharing your hope of a brighter future. And Angie, any last words or comments for Rachel?
No, I think that it was a great night, and thank you for sharing about fighting and looking for hope. I mean, it's not easy, it's not pretty, but sometimes even in the darkest of places, that's where the beauty begins. I really believe that. That's where the beautiful things begin. And I don't think we think that at the time, but when we look back, it's all in retrospect, that it's in the darkness that something beautiful starts to grow. And so I'm so grateful you joined us tonight, and thank you for sharing. We will still follow your story, and if Linda's not at your door in, what's the due date,
you can
I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised.
I know, right? And
well, we'll be following your story for sure. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you'd like to contact Rachel, you are more than welcome to reach her at, she's got a website, first off, which is a really beautiful website, and that's RachelleFriedman.com. That's RACHELLE, Friedman, FRIEDMAN.com. And her email is ref1002@yahoo.com. And you can also visit her on Facebook, and that is facebook.com/Rachel and Chris. So RACHELLEANDCHRIS. And then also on Twitter, for those of you who like to be on Twitter, she is at Follow Rachel, FOLLOWRACHELLE. And there we have it. Did I leave anything out, Rachel?
I don't think so. That's it.
Okay. And so just for listeners that are saying, but that sounds like Rachelle. Well, it looks like Rachelle. But her mother was very
complicated. Yeah.
But her mother was very creative and calls her Rachel. And so there you be, Rachel. It's been our honor to have you join us tonight for sharing your story. Thank you so much. We wish you the best of the best of luck. We look forward to seeing you at your baby shower next year.
Sounds good.
Congratulations. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Grief Diaries. There will be no broadcast next week for Thanksgiving as we spend the evening with our families. And so we will see you again in 2 weeks right here on Grief Diaries Radio Show. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely, lovely night.
The Grief Diaries radio show is brought to you by Alley Blue Media and Good Grief Worldwide, an official partner of National Grief Awareness Day, working to bring grief out of the darkness into the light. For more information about Grief Diaries or to listen to archived episodes, please visit www.griefdiaries.com.